The Innovators Network.
Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
Welcome to this week's Killer Innovation Show. We are continuing in our series of interviews that we have done in the mobile studio on the road. The most recent set of interviews occurred at Tech Expo in Philadelphia. And we have another guest that we will be highlighting in today's show. The guest is Collin Howlett. Collin is the CTO for Vecima and plays an important and key role in the broadband industry, both with Vecima as a company, but Collin as an individual. His contributions, his technical expertise has been critical both to the cable, fiber, mobile industry on a global scale, and had time to have Collin in the mobile studio on the bus. We had a great conversation, covered a wide range of topics, including the pace of innovation, the future of fiber. We talked about some of the unbelievable speeds of the broadband network that we're going to see over the next 20 to 30 years that are already on roadmaps. We talked a lot about artificial intelligence, machine learning, automation, trend spotting. We covered a wide range of areas. But ultimately, the theme for this discussion with Collin really boiled down to the pace of change, the pace of innovation. How do you deal with that pace? And then also, at that pace, where do you source innovation? Where do you look for the next idea that you're going to develop? In this case, as a senior leader, a CTO for a major vendor, where do you source ideas? How do you go out and find those ideas? At the end, I asked Collin the question I ask all of our guests, which is, what's that one piece of advice you would give a listener for the show? So you will want to listen to the very end and get that nugget of knowledge from Collin. So before we jump into this week's episode, though, got that favor to ask. Follow, like, and share. Follow us on social media. Like the show. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a rating. And share it. Share it with others who you think might benefit from hearing this particular episode. And also, I'll throw in here, subscribe. If you're not already a subscriber, subscribe to the show so you don't miss a single episode. You can follow us over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, SoundCloud, Overcast, blah, blah, blah. You name it. We're on every one of the podcasting platforms. You can find us there. So with that, without any further ado, let's hop in to this week's episode.
This episode is sponsored by Zoom. With Zoom, you can streamline your communication, collaboration, and creativity all in one place. Zoom is the market-leading platform that provides video meetings, voice, webinars, and chat across desktops, phones, tablets, and conference room systems. To learn more about Zoom and sign up for your free account, visit killerinnovations.com/Zoom.
So, Collin, how's the show going for you? It's been kind of a crazy couple of days around here.
Yeah, it's been very busy. It's been 3 years since we've had this here with SCT, but it's been fantastic seeing everyone face to face and seeing just the crowds of people coming through. It's been really good participation from the operators, vendors, just seeing the innovation that's happening out here.
Yeah, it's the energy level. I'm amazed even today. We're at the last day. Mm-hmm. Typically it's kind of a real downer day.
Oh no, not at all. It's still going strong.
It's still going strong. It's going to go strong right up until they literally have to start marshaling people out of the building.
Yeah, absolutely. We the last time we were here, we had a 20 by 20 booth. We have a 30 by 50 booth, and we're wall to wall all week. It's been fantastic that way, and I haven't sat down. So the shows, there's no time for lunch. It's just a constant stream because everyone's interested in talking about where the future of cable is going, and they're so excited to have that contact that we haven't had for a couple of years.
Yeah, well, and it is interesting from the standpoint of the future, right? We've had kind of a 2-year lull. Nobody stopped. Everybody still was developing new products, new versions of platforms, entirely new technologies. But like in my case, the number one question I get all the time for this entire week was, so what's next? What's the next thing that's coming? Where's the future? What's over the horizon?
Yeah.
Give me a hint. What are you guys? What are you thinking? Those kinds of things. And as I shared in the main stage event on Tuesday, predicting the future is getting harder and harder because the pace of innovation is just accelerating.
It is, yeah. We're really seeing customers are deploying new products faster and faster than ever. And obviously, the big thing I know here, this is the cable show, but it's really the fiber show now. There's so much emphasis. There's so much happening in that part of the industry, whether it's through government funding or just operators understanding that they need to move speeds up to enable the next generation of applications, and they're driving it faster and faster.
Well, you're talking about cable, right? I get a question all the time of, when is CableLabs going to change its name? Or the show is called Cable Tech Expo, but you're right, it's fiber. We've got some 5G providers here, so you got the wireless side. It's really, I guess, more broadly, generically, broadband.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you look at there's still going to be I guess a cachet or a heritage of what the cable means as an operator. Most of the cable operators now are very successful mobile operators, obviously pushing that through. How are they different from a telco? That's a different mindset, different attitudes, and how they work things through. Cable tends to just run with things in some cases, and, as opposed to a real structured approach. And I think that promotes some innovation. They can find new ideas, and it varies a lot around individual companies. And obviously, I think we're going to keep cable in the name as long as someone still has HFC deployed in the network.
Well, the way I describe it is okay, fiber optic is a cable.
It is,
right?
Absolutely. It's a wire.
HFC is a cable.
Yeah.
In fact, it was yesterday I was having a conversation with somebody and talking about HFC and fiber. Oh, it was at the analyst breakfast yesterday that I hosted. And I got the question came from one of the analysts about it. And I said, well, you have to recognize we did friend of the court briefing for a major cable operator. The courts and governments were looking at network architectures, etc. And the court asked us to do a briefing for the court. We get asked to do these things fairly regularly with policymakers, etc. And the question is okay, compare a cable network to a fiber network. What are the issues, differences? And when we did the analysis, when you look at a packet of data transiting the network, a lot of people would be surprised to learn that on a cable network, that packet of data spends 99.7% of its time on fiber.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's only 0.3% on the coax.
Well, there's a reason they call it the last mile.
Right. It was more like the last 100 feet.
Last 100 feet, especially with distributed access and the things that are happening there we're pushing Ethernet deeper into the network. So we're actually running the packet all the way to the edge. And then at that point, transferring it into the RF domain where it goes over the cable. So.
Yeah. And so I think, the people in the room, some of them were like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. We can... The filing we did as a friend of the court, we we can make that available. You want to see it, you can see it. You can see the analysis. You can challenge us on our analysis.
I believe it.
But it's a lot of people are just they think of, oh my gosh, it's got to be fiber. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. We're 99.7% fiber.
Yeah, we just
don't have to dig up your sidewalk or your grandmother's flower beds. You know?
And we can see the things we're talking about with DOCSIS 4.0. We can have speeds that exceed fiber. What fiber can do in 10 gig PON today. So I think there's a long future ahead in the cable industry. We've been talking about that a lot this week. Of how far do we go? When do we go? With the panel I was presenting with, the co-panelists talked about projections into 2032, and that's not even with DOCSIS 4.0. So. As much as we'll get there, keep going with fiber. We're going to have HFC as a system because of of the millions of miles that are out in the network today for a very long time.
Well, yeah, and it's the future. We were talking about fiber.
Yep.
In our research labs, in the fiber labs, when we're demonstrating coherent optics at 50,000 gig.
Yeah.
Think about that. Not 10 gig.
No.
50,000 gig over a single strand.
That's incredible.
It's like, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, nobody's ever going to need. Trust me.
Yeah.
It might be 20, 30, 40 years from now, be way past our lifetime.
Yeah.
But,
Gigabit per second. Who ever needs that? No. Well, we're at lunch. In talking the operator discussions we've had this week, there's 8x8 services, 8 gigabit down, 8 gigabits up, symmetrical services that are starting to get offered on fiber. We'll be able to offer 5 gig symmetric services on cable soon. So there's tremendous change there, and we don't really need it from a capacity perspective, but we don't want to prevent those applications that do need it. And I know CableLabs is doing a lot of work and driving what's happening with the next generation of.
Well, and again, this gets into the whole area of catalyst to innovate, right? The broadband network has always been a key catalyst for other innovators. It wasn't like YouTube and Netflix existed and then broadband picked up its speeds.
No, the broadband created that. We had a background. We built the infrastructure, and the applications came, and we're going to continue to do that over and over. As much as we don't have a use case for it, we don't want to be short-sighted. We want to understand. We just want to lay the groundwork, let it run, and the innovation that happens within cable as well is just getting more and more bits out of every megahertz that we can over time. And finding ways to split that amongst fewer customers and get things going. Well,
and I think the cable industry doesn't get enough credit. And look, I came in from the outside. I wasn't a cable guy. Well, I can't claim I'm the new guy anymore. So I just passed 10 years.
Yes. Okay.
I'll be in cable years. That's still short.
That is. I'm 26 years in. So when I started in cable, it's over half of my life is now in cable. I started when I was working in this industry when I was 21 straight out of school, and at that point, that was 1997. DOCSIS didn't exist. It was early modems. It was early innovators like Zenith and Loud City that were doing two-way cable, and it was impressive. I still remember the days of going and seeing a Shaw demonstration of Shaw at home. And you can get 250 kilobits per second, and now we're at 250 kilobits. How do we get 25 gigabits per second?
Yeah, exactly.
Just the orders of magnitude.
Yeah, and you just think about the pace of that change, and you look at that acceleration.
Yeah.
And you look at the compounding growth, many multiples of Moore's Law when you think about the doubling effect of network speeds that we've had in the industry.
And you also think about it, I'm a little bit of a hardware guy by nature. I'm electrical engineer, computer science, but I think of the hardware and I think of what's out in the network. And if you actually look back at the racks of equipment we had to when we're going from 250 kilobits per second to 25 gigabits, we actually have far less equipment than we ever had before. We can hollow out hubs. We have equipment that's just at the end of the line and in the data center or a very far location because of what we can do with long distance Ethernet and distributed access. So we're changing the footprint of how we're delivering the technology and still ramping the speeds up like crazy.
Yeah, well, that is interesting because one of the assets an industry accumulates, in this case, broadband industry, is real estate. And now all of a sudden there's less gear in that real estate.
Yeah, there's less gear, and there's a move to move away from that. Can we do more with less in the right locations? Can we centralize more? I think I've been doing quite a few discussions and panels around edge compute and where that's going. And obviously we kind of talk about near edge and far edge. Far edge being maybe a node in an HFC environment, near edge being a hub site, and there's that hollowing out of the middle of. We're going to need that for these applications that need these latency sensitive things. We want to enable that in the network, things like low latency DOCSIS that are pulling it down. But then we also recognize we're pushing more at the data plane where it needs to be. So you distribute what you must, the data plane at the edge, and centralize what you can. We have these massive scale data centers where we can put many applications in the right environments, and we can put that wherever we need to in the network.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's this conversation about skill sets, because the network is looking less hardware,
much more software,
and much more software.
Yeah,
and that requires the network field engineers of the future look different,
they do.
or they have a different skill set.
Yeah.
How do you prepare for industries that go through those kinds of fundamental innovations that are driving those kinds of fundamental changes in an industry, which also drives a skill set requirement?
Yeah, I think it's good to have an understanding from my perspective is really from a system view of, okay, so do I dive all the way deep, all the way down the software? Maybe not. Am I diving deep in developing ASICs? No, but I understand the trade-offs between what fits where, what are the power trade-offs, what are the trade-offs of how I can manage the network as an operator or manage the network as a vendor and building it, and looking at how you fit those into different locations. So having a view of understanding where to put certain parts of the technology was really a way to look at that. So you look at understanding that software hardware trade-off, maybe not trade-offs, but the software hardware division, and the specialist versus general purpose.
Right. Yeah, I mean, one of the things we're looking at is you think about all the network build-out that's occurring in the U.S., but not just the U.S. Canadian government's pushing into rural broadband.
Yeah.
European governments are looking into rural broadband. Everybody's looking for hiring.
Yeah.
Then you got the skill set gap. Can I find the right people with the right skills?
Yeah.
And then how do I get them engaged? Because in many cases you have time requirements. You have to complete your build outs in certain times, and just for chuckles and grins. Oh, by the way, we're doing a major network regrooming in the form of a DOCSIS 4 upgrade. Right? On top of everything.
We got to move it out quick, but we're also adjusting what we can. I think there is going to be this shortage, and we certainly see it in the work we do with operators. One, actually, the construction side is always going to be there. We're building as fast as we can build fiber. We're building it and pushing it out. But it's people that understand the network side of how things work, understand how packets run through the network, understand those, and there's tools, there's ways to understand how some of that works, and then but having a software perspective of knowing how the software layers and the software stack fit together, and how you can leverage open source and how you can leverage certain kinds of technologies to put that together is important. And increasingly, it's becoming a more diverse industry where disaggregation is a word we're using quite a bit, of pulling the software out, centralizing that, and then making the edges as specialized as we can.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess another way to think about it is creating optionality, because every MSO is different. Oh,
that's I go back to what's a cable company? Well, there isn't a single model. As much as the industry has tried to we standardize on certain technologies, but the deployments of those are different everywhere.
Right.
We might have one customer who says, talking about software and how things fit together, they might say, okay, we need a scalable system that is automated, and automation provisioning, thinking of how you remove some of the manual skill, getting this to the skills gap is a big thing. How do we automate the deployments of these networks? We might have one customer who wants a single controller for the entire network. We might have a different customer because of how they're arranged that has tens of regional data centers, and they're running it that way, and that's a big difference in how you architect and build the system for that network, just because of how maybe organizationally they're working. It's maybe not even a technology question.
Yeah, well, yeah. In many cases, it's not a technology, and in some cases, it's history.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the way that network was built
or acquired, assembled. Yeah,
exactly. I made this point in the opening session on Tuesday again about we need to think about our legacy, because many of these things are going to get deployed long beyond our lifetimes.
Yeah.
And just as we're the beneficiary of the legacies of the original people in the industry, there's going to be people that are going to come behind us.
Yeah,
the decisions we make, and they either will love us or hate us.
Probably a mix of both.
Yeah. So 20 years from now, like, who made that decision?
It made a lot of sense at the time.
It made sense. Yeah, couldn't anticipate that. But and when you think about the products you build, though, you do have to think about kind of the unintended or unanticipated,
Mm-hmm.
Changes that are going to happen. How do you think about that from an innovation perspective? When you think about you're laying out an entirely some new product X,
Yeah.
and you're trying to meet the customer's needs, but knowing that this could be in the network
for a long time. You have to assume 10 years. Everything we do, you have to assume at least 10 or 15 years. We have to plan. We have to plan for modularity where we can, because we know it's changing out. Recent work that we've done that the cable industry has finally pushed forward is this innovation around just the hardware boxes themselves. We have nodes. They sit in pedestals on the curb. They sit up on the pole. Those have been proprietary for a long time. And I think work that the SCTE has done, work that was driven by Charter Communications to build the generic access platform,
Mm-hmm.
that's an area where we think we look at what's happened in the industry. There are nodes that have been in the field that were supposed to be there for 5 years that have been there for 30 years.
30 years.
They're still out there. Or 25 years. They're still there. But now that those companies are gone, how do you replace that? Well, this is the start of that. Build something generic that you can add into and change out, because we know we're changing over time from HFC to fiber to wireless. That transition changes, and try to build a system for that. The other thing you have to do from a software perspective, that's on the hardware side, is really build it as a modular system, and being able to change the layers out, change out how the interface is to a northbound interface to a management system. We know that's going to change over time. Make that a component. And that's where we get into things like cloud native frameworks, where we're looking at building small services that we can pull each of those microservices out, change them, run them independently from a development perspective. That really speeds up the pace of work for
Mm-hmm.
us, because now we don't have this monolithic system. We make a change, we have to test it for 3 months. No, we make a change. There's a well-known API. We move that forward, and then we swap out that system with the new one and continue going. All the other systems keep working the way they're supposed to.
Well, you talked before about the customers wanting to look at automation because taking out, and there's been this ongoing conversation not just within our industry but across all industries around the role of AI.
Yeah.
You can either think, oh my gosh, AI is the world's greatest thing, or you can say, oh my gosh, it's the evil empire, it's going to take over our lives. Talk a little bit about your thinking about innovation from the standpoint of this automation piece, but then what your thoughts on the role of AI to take on, because the complexity of this work can far exceed a human ability to manage.
It can. So it's about breaking into discrete chunks, but then the role of machine learning, and I like to think of mostly about machine learning and applying those algorithms on top, is spotting trends and looking at the data and seeing things that we can't necessarily see when we try to apply a set of strict rules to it. It's taking a data set, you're obviously training something on it, and understanding the anomalies. And really in these systems in the automation side, it's about trying to do anomaly detection and things that would be hard to flag otherwise, but all of a sudden you're bringing all of this data in, doing analytics on it through machine learning and through AI, and being able to use that to apply to understand the next fix that you have to do, as opposed to just reacting.
Right.
That really helps you.
Yeah. I mean, and we were talking earlier about the skills gap. One of the roles that, a lot of people have been looking at the AI is we're at a stage where a lot of our brilliant engineers are retiring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. In this industry, there's a gap.
And how do you capture that expertise? Can you capture it in some kind of a form?
Yeah, that's an interesting and difficult problem. I think I think of the age gap. I mean, in cable, we've got this aging out of the of people not necessarily bringing in the new young talent. We have to deal with that. How can, from an AI perspective, I'm not sure we can replace some of the design skills, but we can try to automate more of the processes that we've done in a manual way. I think that'll help things. I think the machine learning aspects of things is also picking up new technology or doing processing in a way that you never could before. And I'm interested. There's a whole edge. You could spend a long time talking about it, of how much can we automate the development of the technology. So you think of things like DALI and the work that's happening there, and just how now you're actually programmatically generating art. Is it art if you're but somebody's putting input into it? We know that there's tools to help source code development. So can we bridge some of the skills gap and those by actually having the very high level coming from the human, but some of the low level generation actually happening through AI machine learning, generating code automatically? I find that very interesting. One, because it'll save us developers, but also it helps address that gap of just, can we do those things? We're obviously not there yet. But
we're not there yet, but it is interesting because today you talk about DALL-E and your ability to textually describe, create a picture of a cat riding a bicycle with a party hat on, and out it comes.
Yeah.
My son-in-law, who's a software engineer, he's been experimenting with it a lot, and he's come up with some amazing artwork that's like, holy smokes,
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of these AI copywriting tools, right? So you go in, you can put in you put in
a few bullet points, and out comes copy.
And one of them is that you put in like 150 words or something to describe kind of what the blog you want to write. Hit the button, and it cranks out the blog. Now, what it does is it's a kind of a better than draft version, but not a finished product. You still got to go back in and work on it.
Edit,
So if you think about it in that context of code, does it speed up the process? I'm a software engineer by background.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, okay, would I take if someone handed me a draft version of code, does that help or hurt? Because I got to learn how they think in the structure of the code before I can do anything.
But if you think of the example of your son working through how you're working with DALL-E, you're learning how to work with the system. It's the same thing here. Now it's optimizing and changing, but you're learning how to adapt to it. Like you have to adapt to any tool. It's a tool. It's a tool that helps to enhance your ability to do things. And so I think that's where it will fall in. Maybe this is just a pie in the sky dream, but it would be surprised. We're surprised with the things that are happening. So.
I'll tell you, I've been impressed with. There's been a couple of companies that have put wrappers around DALL-E to even enhance its ability to do interpretive feeding into DALL-E to get a better result. Some of the early results were kind of like a little weird, misshapen faces and that type of thing. And I've seen some of the copywriting tools, and I've played around with some of the open source stuff online, and it actually is pretty. It's getting there. It's a little scary. Like, okay, how do I know who's writing this? But I think the fact is it's coming, and if you as an innovator are not thinking about the issues now, you're going to get caught flat-footed.
Absolutely.
When it finally catches up.
Yeah, you just think of how you can apply it. I mean, we don't have the answer today, but there's machine learning in general opens up a whole new perspective of tools and processes that you can do that you just weren't doing before.
So talk a little bit about the innovation culture at Vecima.
So we've been a long time around. We've been around since 1988, focused hardware, RF software all the way through. We have a team, and my team, the office of the CTO, really focused on looking at what's next. And how do we do that? We talk with customers. We look at the trends. And one of the things we like to do is really look to outside the field that we're in and see where things are changing. And so there's scale, and there's a lot of technology that happens outside your very specific area. If you focus just on your niche, you can kind of cycle back through on ideas that are rehashed. Whereas if you step out and look at what's happening in other industries and where they're moving, that you can bring some of that back in and say, hey, that's a technology and an application that we haven't thought of using in this particular cable space. So maybe we could use that particular technique here. That's something that we do quite a bit of. But it's really, for us, innovation is an iterative process. It's coming up with concepts and ideas and iterating those back through with the customer base, because those operators are different and they have their own ideas about where they're going to go. It's that cycle, that iteration cycle of idea. Is this going to work? No, we should do it this way. And moving that back through, going across a wider base, and then that coalesces into a concept, show it, and then eventually we get into an actual product. So.
And when you think back over the years, because how long have you been at Vecima now?
Straight out of school, 26 years.
Yeah, so 26 years. Yeah. Think about the pace. of 10 years ago to the pace today?
Yeah.
Compare those.
Yeah, we had time to. It felt like we had time to breathe back then. Just every now you have to go so fast that the next thing is coming. It's like, oh, we're just getting 25. Going, oh, 100 gig coherent ponds. Well, we better start on that. And so it is moving very quickly. In the end, the rollout scales and the way the customer deploys it, it still takes them time to work through that. They're getting faster. They're adding more software in their processes. They're changing the way they work to be able to move faster. But there's still, it's infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's not, it's a little different there. But it is changing quickly. We can't have 5 and 6 year programs because that's not going to work. You have to be able to spin out concepts and spin out prototypes quickly and move that into the next stage and then make decisions quickly, I think is a critical thing.
Yeah. I mean, talk about that a little bit. How do you speed up the decision making? When you've got an organization that's been around for a while and you're trying to, you kind of get fixed in the process of who needs to sign off or approve that feature.
Yeah, and you don't always follow the process. My boss is probably listening, but you got sometimes you have to go around and you talk. You dive a little bit deeper, and it's involving the right stakeholders and working through that, and knowing that sometimes the ideas, if you get too top down, the ideas that are coming from the bottom up are missing. And there's a lot of smart engineers, smart developers within the company. You have to make sure you're listening to what they're talking about and bringing it back in. So it's that iterative, putting ideas out there, make sure you're communicating the things and don't hold the innovation in one little area. You're not trying to create an ivory tower, right? You don't want to do that. You want to disseminate it out, get that feedback back from the company, and then bounce those ideas around, move it through. And then when the decisions come, it's good to make decisions quickly and change them quickly. I think because if you have a process and a culture to do that, that works a lot better than having a big roll up to a big bang decision that in the end you're going to change it.
Yeah, it's one of the pieces of advice I give a lot of people is, if you can avoid it, never have the title Chief Innovation Officer.
Yeah, I specifically don't have that.
Because if someone has that title, then everybody else in the organization goes, okay, it's not my responsibility.
Yeah, he's got it.
Yeah. So go come up with the next product.
And that's not.
And
the case.
Innovation is not a role. It's a capability, and you need a capability across the organization, not a role or a team. And in fact, we don't at CableLabs, we've knocked out anybody with anything innovation in their title. We don't even have a team named innovation because it's got to be across the entire organization.
Yeah, I hear innovation as a title. I agree. Is a thing. You don't want to hear somebody that's a futurist. That means you're just making stuff up. In most cases. Sorry, any futurists out there listening. And the last part of that as well, just going back to some of the decision making is there's a culture to have internally where you don't get emotionally tied to technology decisions that you're making, because customers, for many reasons, will decide to change path and direction. You could be spending a lot of time working in a particular direction. You have a culture and a team that can react quickly and move when that happens and not get caught up in the thing I've been working on for 5 years now isn't happening. Why isn't it happening? I'm despondent. We don't have that. You know that these are technology decisions in the end. And sometimes they're not actually a technology decision, but understanding where that's going is really important. And you can pivot and you apply your brain to the next idea and where things are moving. So that helps move quickly.
Yeah. So as we wrap up today's episode, one question I want to ask you is you've been in your role, you're a CTO. What advice would you give an innovator? Someone who's got that little spark running around in their head. What's the first thing they should do?
Get it out of your head and into someone else. I think the thing that I've always found is that you could feel like you're the one that needs to develop everything, but you're kind of handcuffed by your own viewpoint and your own personal lens in the world. The more that you can go and talk to more people, every person that you talk to will have a little nugget and it'll go off in a little direction, and you'll iterate through those as quickly as you can to find what the real nugget is. And it's moving quickly through that really helps with innovation.
Great. Perfect. Colin, thanks for joining us here on This Is Show.
Okay, thank you, Phil. It's fantastic.
Well, it's my hope that the discussion that I just had with Colin, you got some nuggets out of that. There were a number of topics that we really got into. One, pace of innovation, talking a lot about the future of broadband technologies. One area that I did want to highlight in this discussion is that I am a firm believer that broadband networks are a catalyst for innovation. When you think about all of the services and capabilities that are being delivered, broadband plays a critical role, whether that's in healthcare, whether that's in education, entertainment, communication, collaboration. Broadband plays a key role. So, albeit we may have gotten into a little technical areas in some cases and got our propeller spinning, hopefully you walked away with some insight on what's coming, the impact of the future trends and changes, but also in a broader context, the role of innovation, the importance of innovation, the sourcing of innovations. I think Colin's comment about looking at adjacencies for innovation sourcing and talking about the pace of innovation. And I particularly liked Colin's comment at the very end when asking for that one piece of advice, which was get your idea out of your head and into somebody else's. You're not going to be able to solely deliver your idea. Innovation's a team sport. And the more effective you are and the faster you are getting the ideas out of your head and into somebody else's head, so that now you are working with somebody on your idea, the higher your chance of having innovation success. So hopefully you got a lot out of today's conversation with Colin. And again, love to hear your thoughts and your comments on these interviews. And if there's other questions you think we should be asking, let us know. If there's other guests you think we should have on the show, drop us a note. With that, I want to thank you for the time out of your busy schedule. Truly do appreciate you taking the time to be with us here today. We put a lot of effort into each one of these episodes. We've been doing this for 18 years. Coming up in March, we will start season 19, our 19th year of producing the Killer Innovation Show. And we always are keenly interested in getting your feedback. The team here relishes hearing from you. So any form of feedback, we think of that as a gift from you, and we greatly appreciate it. And again, I would ask for your suggestions on new topics. We're setting up the show starting after CES and laying out the topics. If there's a topic that's of particular interest that you want to hear about, let us know. Just drop us a note. You can do that over at theinnovators.network. That is the network of innovation journalism, the innovation newsroom, where myself and other contributors are collecting up and writing articles and launching new podcasts all around innovation. So you can check that out. Just hit the contact form and put your contact information in, and it'll get routed to the right people within the network. So with that, thanks again for your time out of your busy schedule. Work on your ideas. Don't let your ideas collect dust in your idea notebook. Execute, execute, execute. Make progress. Go out there. Change the world. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, this has been the Killer Innovation Show on the Innovators Network.
This show is distributed by the Innovators Network. For more information and other great shows and content, visit theinnovators.network.